Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for Star Wars Rebels, kind of, as well as a discussion of lots of horror, sci-fi, fantasy book shows, movies, and more. Hello, my name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome, for the final time, to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
For one last time in this episode. One last ride. In the Airlock, it's a giant mailbag. We're clearing out the mailbag of all the best questions you guys have sent that we haven't been able to answer, and a few new ones that you sent too. And in Nerd Out, this is a great final nerd out for this iteration of the pod. Someone who's been so important to our pod, to our Discord community, is Haitch, the co-host of the Escape Hatch podcast, formerly known as Dune Pod, and he's going to be nerding out about something really special.
Coming up, mailbag. First question from JM. What are some of your favorite Image or other independent comics? Have either of you read The Department of Truth by James Tynion 4? I have read that.
Very good.
Rosie, any thoughts?
My favorite Image comics, man, there are so many. Definitely for me, I mean, obviously we talk a lot about the big ones like Saga, you know, stuff like that. I have a very big soft spot in my heart for The Wicked and the Divine.
Oh, great one.
By Jamie McKelvey and Kieran Gillen, colors by Matt Wilson. Like, that is a book that was very much a huge part of my comic book experience when I was working in the comic shop. It was something when I was really getting back into comics after Young Avengers. So I always send people that way. I will also just say, like, no surprises to anyone, but I love Spawn. I'm like, if you haven't checked out Spawn, just read Spawn.
Wow!
Like, I love Todd McFarlane, the Todd father, you know, I feel like he's grown into a great kind of uncle of comics over the years. There was a great video recently on Wired that was like him answering questions about making comics that kind of enamored me to look back at Spawn again. So I would say, like, especially those first kind of 11 issues is really just good stuff. And also Ultimate Wife Guy comic, because he basically, like, he literally was like, what would hell be? And he would be like, hell would be for me that I couldn't see my wife again. And I love that energy. So what about you? What are some of your favorite Image?
Well, first of all, let me speak on The Department of Truth, which is a fantastically
so good,
prescient and very artistically, like, genre pushing book that, to be 100% honest, I have to read one issue basically a week because it melts my brain too much and gives me a headache, but I love that book. I would say here's a rec that I got from Zig lately that I love. Do a power bomb.
Oh, it's so
Image.
good. Just won an Eisner Award.
Just won an Eisner Award. 7 issues.
Yeah, Daniel Warren Johnson, just a total powerhouse in the comics industry. Just absolutely unbelievable.
And so the idea is, it's this dimension where everyone's a professional wrestler and they don't know that in this world professional wrestling's fake. It's super fun. Just wonderful. The art is wonderful, funny and fast moving. Loved it.
Yeah, it's great stuff. There's so many good Image comics. So just go to your comic shop and ask them to show you all the Image trades. They're very affordable. Great place to jump on. This was a good question. Love Image comics.
Next question.
With so much good stuff out there, this is a good soundtrack for this. Sometimes I go through periods of time where I find it hard to decide what to watch next, Sergio says. I feel like whatever I decide to watch, there's something better I could be watching. Since I recently went through this, my question is for you, do you ever feel the same way? And do you have your own ways to get around it? So do you ever get overwhelmed by the amount of great stuff out there to choose?
I do. I deal with it in different ways. So with TV, I'm a completionist. If I start, I'll finish it, even if it sucks and I don't like it. Just because I find it useful to articulate why I don't like a thing and be like, have they changed my mind? Did they win me over or did they not? With books, if I am not in, like, after the first 50 pages, then I'm just going to move on to another
That's something
book.
I've learned how to do this year with books, because I used to always have to finish, and I was like, wait a minute, I could be reading a great book or rereading something I really loved.
There's just so many books. There's literally like 5 centuries of books.
Yeah, there's like so many more books than you could ever even comprehend to read in your life.
So with those, I think the last book that I read that I like pushed through to read that I hated for the first like 100 pages was the Children of Men, the original, the book version of Children of Men, which is significantly different than the movie,
which is obviously
adaptation,
a masterpiece,
which is my favorite movie maybe ever. But the book is really, really different, and it's really just kind of like is revving its engine for the first 100 pages. Although ends really interestingly, and it's significantly different. But that was the last time I read a book that I'm like, I hate this.
Yeah.
Usually I'm just out. I also try to select shows specifically for can I finish it?
Yes.
Like I started watching Hijack on your recommendation.
Exactly. Just the trashiest, most silliest fun
It's just
thing.
people on a plane who are all stupid and are making the dumb decision.
At all times.
At all times.
And it's only 7 episodes.
It's so I can absolutely get to the end of that one because I'm just like, wait, why did they do this? Oh,
it's the ultimate yelling episodes. At the TV show.
Yeah, like don't do that.
Don't do it, bro. Every decision Idris makes is terrible, but you're like, Idris, I love you.
Hey,
please make this work
It's
out.
well known that if you hijack a plane, you can do anything you want. The pilots are not opening the fucking door. Period.
Don't even get me started.
They're not opening it. Do they open the door in this show?
Spoiler alert.
For the craziest fucking reason.
Yeah, absolutely deranged television. I approach this with something I'm trying to bring more into my life. When I was younger, I was definitely like a FOMO person, like fear of missing out. And that also included TV. I needed to watch every prestige thing. I wanted to be in the conversation. I feel like in our job, that's part of it too, whether it's talking about TV or trying to write our own TV. But as I get older, I'm embracing JOMO, the joy of missing out. Like being happy that I don't know about something or that I stayed home or whatever instead of going out. So I generally am the same. I'm like, do I think I can finish something? The Bear, I'm going to watch it. It's like, I know that I'm going to like it. I know I can finish the episodes. English TV trained me on shorter seasons.
Yeah.
So like something I recently started that I definitely did not need to and will take me like 3 years was Supernatural because everyone was like, God, why haven't you watched this? Like, please just fucking like watch Supernatural. So I got it on DVD and I'm going to watch it at some point. But it's like I just focus on things that my friends like, that I want to watch. If it's something I'm covering, then I'll obviously watch it. But I think the best thing is just try something. Also, if you're in that stage where you're feeling really overwhelmed, maybe go back to something that made you really excited about TV and kind of rekindle that feeling. And then you can kind of start new stuff because it is so overwhelming.
Yes, but I guess the number one thing we're both saying is value your time.
Exactly.
Just value your time. There is so much good stuff out there that just allow something to resonate with you.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because now there are streaming services like Criterion, Shudder. There's every kind of niche streaming service where you can really be catered to. So you don't just have to watch stuff for the sake of it. Like find something that resonates with you and enjoy your time watching it.
Alex asks, when will we see Mephisto for the first time in the MCU?
Wow. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate this question. As a huge part of the reason to blame for the Mephisto scandal of the WandaVision era of Marvel TV, as somebody who was a Mephisto truther, who knows? I have heard rumors that they are going to cast Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto, and he will be in Ironheart, and he will be like a businessman version of Mephisto. Whomst among us knows? I do believe Mephisto will be in the MCU soon, but I also believe that the people behind the MCU understand the weight of introducing Mephisto now post WandaVision. So it will probably be, I would say, before Phase 6. Well, definitely before the X-Men are introduced, but otherwise, I mean, who knows?
Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I think it's Fantastic Four.
I like that. He's an important kind of play thing in that world.
And prediction, I think they retcon. It's not even retcon because the phases have not come out yet. But I think they, because of the Kang issues, I think they switch gears, and the bad guy, the big bad guy, is Mephisto.
Mephisto's the easiest retcon because you can just say he's been controlling everything the whole time. So it's very easy for them to do that. So Alex, the answer is soon, but we don't know when. But when he does show up, we will have something to say about it.
Wiz and Charlie Puth's lawyers have been in contact. We have to stop.
Cease and desist.
We have to stop doing the song.
Just curious if you guys have watched any of the newest Star Trek content being put on Paramount Plus, and can it get a little bit of X-ray love? Jason, have you watched any of those shows?
I have, and it will get some X-ray love when next we see you again. So stay tuned watching your podcast feeds for when we reappear back in such a place. Cool Kid Coda asks, thoughts on the X-Men run since 2019? Started reading Dawn of X and want to know what y'all think of it. I think it's the best time ever to be an X-Men fan.
It's so great. Like, there hasn't been an era like this since, like, New X-Men. And even at the time, people didn't really know Morrison and Quietly's New X-Men was this huge era. I feel like something they did really well with House of X and that whole X era and the Hickman X office is they got people excited for the event space that it was in. And obviously now you have all these beautiful collections you can read to lead into everything coming up to, you know, the Fall of X and the huge events of the Hellfire Gala recently. I just think it's so much fun. I also think this is one of the X-Men eras which we haven't had enough of in recent years, where there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
You like a comedy comic, read Hellions. Like, you want to read something that's serious and scary, get in the main Hickman stuff. You want to enjoy incredible production on your comics in a way you've never really seen before in design. That's Tom Muller designing those books. Like, this is just such an interesting, good space, and I love it. And I'm excited to see what happens next with this era of the X-Men, because I do think it's one of the strongest that we've had for a very long time.
Yeah, as a lifelong X-Men fan, I've always just wanted them to have a place. And the Krakoa era is the X-Men with a place in the world that's pretty much inviolable now. I think what's really interesting about what's going on now is having given them a chance to govern themselves. You know, what's the quote from Abraham Lincoln that from like 1838 or whatever, like, will a European giant step across the ocean and smash us at a blow? No, if destruction is to be our lot, we will be its author.
Yeah.
The X-Men, you know, there's too much drama in that group.
It's petty group, man.
Hard to govern themselves when there's that much drama, that much history, and I think that's what's really interesting about it. But it's been the best. I think it's been the best time ever, literally ever, to be an X-Men fan. There's so many books. The books are great.
There's so many different kinds of people telling the stories.
They have a power in this world now. They're not just like on the edge of extinction, being hounded like to the death, or living in a city or an island off the coast of a city somewhere, just like trapped there. They have a nation, a burgeoning nation. They start to colonize space. They're a real power. Now the question is, like, what will they do with it and how will they serve? But it's been fantastic. And adding to the points you made, it's been a real eye-opener in terms of the characters who've been allowed to really pop and resonate, like Mr. Sinister.
Mr. Sinister!
This is like, there's never been a better time to be like, holy shit, Mr. Sinister is
vibey. Just
vibey,
funny,
a vibey guy.
Incredible cape. Yeah, I love him. Anders asks, this is a great question for you, Jason.
Oh.
For those who want to consume content responsibly during the strike, is there anything we should or shouldn't do to show solidarity? I have seen mixed reports going around about whether or not to boycott or cancel subs to certain streaming services, etc.
Yeah, I mean, the WGA and SAG both have not said people should boycott, people should cancel. There's nobody's calling for that. At the same time, like, your dollar is your dollar, and send it where you want, depending on how much value you think you're getting back from it.
Yeah, and support the Entertainment Community Fund, which we always link to in the show notes. Share posts. That's what a lot of writers and actors have been saying. So just show your solidarity online, and if and when that call comes, hopefully it won't. We're hearing, there might be talks going on that could lead to a good resolution. If that call for a boycott comes, then you'll know, because people they'll let you know.
Anders asks, what is a book series, comic series, video game series, any type of fandom, that you have not yet personally got into but want to in the future? Rosie.
I really want to learn how to play Dungeons and Dragons.
This is I'm glad that you said this.
That's I want to have a campaign. I want to play with a party. Like, that's my big thing that I haven't gotten to do. And everyone I speak to, everyone I know who does it, has the most fun. I met an amazing kid in the comic shop recently this weekend when I was at Spiro's Heroes celebrating their anniversary, who recently got into it, and they dress up with their party. Like, that's my big thing. I've got a lot of books of different tabletop games just because I like to read them, but I've never actually played a campaign. So that's my big one. Exact
same answer. And extending on that, I recently purchased, this is a bad decision because I have a lot of actual work to do, but I recently purchased Baldur's Gate 3, which is, as far as I know, and from everything I have read, the most like granularly accurate depiction of playing D&D in a video game. So I haven't played it yet. I guess this is like, if this is what D&D is like, tell me if I'm doing it wrong. I've taken 3 days now to build my character, just like choosing.
That sounds exactly
stuff.
like the D&D stories I've heard.
So I have not yet actually entered the mix, but I hope to soon. And I too would love to play D&D. If you have a D&D game, you're in LA.
Yeah, let us know.
Homemade Pepsi asked, what are some of your favorite superpower reveal moments in comics, movies, anything, like the reveal of the Resurrection team in House Powers of X with the team on a suicide mission? That was great.
Yeah. Okay, so mine is like really, sorry, but this is like the nerdiest answer ever, but I stand by it, and it also does connect to a modern thing. During Secret Wars, the Jonathan Hickman, Assad era, the final page when you learn the real reason that they did the whole event, which was to bring Miles Morales into the main 616 universe from the Ultimate Universe. The way that they reveal that Miles is in the universe is on the page. They change from mixed case lettering, which is what they use in the Ultimate Universe, to all caps. And that's how you know Miles is in the main universe, and you know that now there is a new Spider-Man. That shit like blew my mind. I thought it was so clever and so subtle. And currently in the Ultimate Invasion book, also by Jonathan Hickman, which I am like absolutely loving. The first issue is one of my favorite issues of any comic I've read recently. That book, the letterer does the same thing where you learn which world you're venturing into with the lettering. And that's Brian Hitch, who I think is at his best here, drawing and colored by Alex Sinclair. This book is just so cool. And for me, those little production nods where you learn, like, there is a huge power reveal that I won't spoil in the first issue of Ultimate Invasion, but you once again learn about it just by the fact that they're not using all caps, they're using mixed case. That to me is like some of the most powerful stuff that gets me like really excited.
That's a great answer. For me, I have to go back to the heat of my comic book buying fandom. I'm going to go with, this is kind of a dodge, but I think it's the correct way to answer this question personally for me. It would be the reveal in Wolverine 75, 1993's Wolverine number 75, of Wolverine's bone claws. So Wolverine with the metal, he had the adamantium still in his body. He had taken a swing at Magneto and had cut him. Magneto got super mad and was like, "You fucking idiot. Master of Magnetism, like, you're still doing this, you're still trying me?" And he's like, watch what real power is. And he just like liquefies all the adamantium in Wolverine's body and sucks it out, severely injuring him. And now we're thinking, so you're thinking for a period of time now, and I forget how many issues you're thinking this, like as he recovers and then eventually decides like, well, I can still be a help to the X-Men. Mm-hmm. You're thinking, okay, he doesn't have unbreakable bones anymore. And he doesn't have the claws, but he's still got the crazy healing factor. Some like he could still surely help. And then during a training session, mm-hmm. he becomes like instinctively like he's trying to help and to contribute to the team, and then all of a sudden snicked, and these crazy like mangly looking bone claws pop out of his hands and he's like in immense pain. And it was, I have to say, as a kid, I was like freaking mind blown.
No, definitely, because I feel like all of us kind of also didn't really know, like, were the claws something they added in the Weapon X program? Like, are those naturally occurring as part of his mutation? But obviously that reveal is like the bone claws, he had them all the time, they just covered them with adamantium. Yeah,
they just covered it, or like replace, however
they did it.
But I will also say that what's funny to me about that scene is like, so Wolverine has just recently had all the adamantium removed from his body, and doctor turned villain, Moira McTaggart, is there, like with the rest of the X-Men, including Jubilee. And, early 90s X-Men, just kind of like watching him go through this session and be like, oh my God, like he's too injured to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then the claws pop out. It's crazy that Moira McTaggart, a doctor, a world-renowned doctor and scientist, was never like, hey, you just had all the metal pulled out of your body. Maybe I should examine you. Let me take a look to see if anything has happened. Yeah. And so everybody is just surprised by the bone claws. Anyway, that would be mine.
He had the healing ex machina. Chris asks, where does Ahsoka happen in the timeline? Meaning the new Ahsoka TV show. I'm watching Rebels for the first time, was delighted to see Mon Mothma finally going public with her rebellion. I realized Rebels must be after or the same time as Andor, so now I'm confused but excited about Ahsoka. I do actually know the answer to this.
Tell it.
Okay, so a brilliant actress who's playing Sabine Wren, Natasha Liu Bordizzo, she had said that it will occur concurrently to The Mandalorian Season 3, which I believe The Mandalorian Season 3 is 11 ABY, which is basically like 7 years after Return of the Jedi. So you're basically in that space between the old and the new, and it'll be very interesting to see, because also we're now hearing these Ahsoka episodes are going to be in that 30-minute range. So like how much are they going to get in? I don't know. But yeah, it will be concurrent, at least partially, to The Mandalorian Season 3.
That's very exciting. So for nascent First Order, remnants of the Empire running around the galaxy, and various, since you're just watching Rebels, I almost spoil it, but I won't. But let's just say various mysteries that are presented to you at the end of Rebels, one surmises will then be answered by this.
I think that we have seen in the latest Ahsoka trailer some very interesting locations from Rebels, especially near the end, so I'm excited.
Slenderman asks, this may have been answered in the past, but do you all have a definitive favorite superhero movie? If so, what separates it from the rest? Rosie?
This is such a hard question, obviously. I think if I'm the truest heart of heart answer for me, it's probably just Batman Returns.
Okay.
Like, I think it's there. I love Batman 89. I love all the MCU movies. I love, like, Thor Ragnarok. There's so many different parts of those stories that I love. But when I think about, like, a movie that truly, as a little kid, I had seen Batman 89. It's actually, like, one of my earliest memories is watching it when I was, like, 2. But Batman Returns was, like, I was a young goth, like I loved it. It has all these characters I love. Michelle Pfeiffer's obviously iconic. And I think that's probably the one I go back to a lot. And I think about a lot, like, what would a Batman Returns comic book look like? Like, what would the kind of stories I would want to tell in that world? And it has such an unbelievable cast. So I think for me, if I had to pick, it would be that one. But I hate to pick because it's really a spectrum. What about you?
I think for me, it would be probably the first Avengers movie. That's not, I don't even think that's the best MCU movie, but it just was, I couldn't believe that they had done it and that they had done it really well, and that every character somehow had this really emotional arc that worked. And, when Banner says, I'm always angry, it was like a fucking
and that
rush.
360 shot of them all standing in New York.
It was awesome. And that was, sitting in the theater for that was like a mind-blowing experience. It'd probably be a tie with that and Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier, I just love Winter Soldier. The elevator fight for me is like a top 3 MCU moment ever.
Yeah. And Eric asks, he's been reading The Black Tongue Thief based on Jason's recommendation, and he absolutely loves it. Says, I'm sure this has come up previously. Any other suggestions of similar novels worth my time? And then he has a follow-up.
You go.
Okay. So he says, he asked me specifically, like, what are the best under-the-radar horror books to check out? I do read a lot of horror. I would recommend, I don't know how under-the-radar these are, but, like, I love Riley Sager. Like, if you haven't read any of his books, he wrote this book called Final Girls, which is probably one of my favorites, which is, like, set in the world of slashers. He's done multiple different books, and each one is kind of playing on like a horror trope. He did like a haunted house book, like kind of inspired by Amityville, and they all sit in like a mystery horror space. I've also would say if you've never read Clive Barker's Books of Blood, they're actually really easy to get now, and those are so unreal. Like, you will read those stories, and whether you're a reader or a storyteller, you will go, oh my fucking God, I've never read anything like this. And it makes you want to tell crazy stories. I mean, I love horror. I actually wrote a horror list at IGN as well that we can link back to, because there's always so many different brilliant books out there. I also love anything by Tanarive Jew. She has a new book out soon called The Reformatory. I've been reading a lot of dark academia recently. It's brilliant. So check those out. Also, I would say I read a really great book that if you love horror is worth reading called The Black Guy Dies First, and it is by a really brilliant woman called Dr. Robin R. Means Coleman and an author called Mark Harris. And it's this really fun academic history of horror and like blackness in horror, but it's put together in such an unbelievably readable way. And if you're a horror fan, you will just love it. Like, I recommend it to people when they ask me for horror books, because it makes such a good companion piece to those books. So yeah, those are just some of them, but there's so many good ones. Jason, is there any more kind of like fantasy books in the vein of Black Tongue Thief that you love?
Well, I'll say some horror stuff. This is definitely not under the radar. Stephen King, but
he does have many books.
I think my favorite, when I was a kid, my favorite thing that Stephen King wrote was a collection of short stories called Night Shift. I think it was his first collection of short stories, and it's a bunch of stories that appeared when he was a freelancer in various men's magazines, including Cavalier, Ubris, Penthouse, lad mags of the day. And it is really gritty, scary stuff. And I just remember, it's very rare that I actually get scared. Part of the reason that I and like horror movies is like I can watch them in the middle of the night and I enjoy them, but they don't really scare me. I got really scared by this book, Jerusalem's Lot, and almost all of these stories have been adapted into stuff. So it opens with Jerusalem's Lot, which is the vampire story that then became a vampire, I believe, TV miniseries.
Yeah, Salem's Lot.
Starring David Soul. Really scary about this guy who inherits this mansion that then has creepy sounds and things happening inside of it. Is probably vampires living in the basement. Graveyard Shift, which was I think was also adapted, and I forget where. Night Surf, which is super trippy. This is a lot of this stuff is Stephen King's drug phase. I Am the Doorway, which is I think still one of the great teleportation stories of all time. Trucks, which was became I believe became Maximum Overdrive.
Hey.
Strawberry Spring, which to this day I find one of the absolute scariest reads ever about, I don't want to spoil it, but it's about a series of serial killings that happen in and around a college campus when the fog of a kind of late summer rain are over the university, and it is really mind-melting and scary. The Ledge, which is just one of the many stories from this that got adapted for the horror anthology The Cat's Eye, if anybody remembers Cat's Eye. Lawnmower Man, which became The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Critters Incorporated, that's another Cat's Eye one. Children of the Cord, which became a long-running and
7
somewhat
movies or something.
and very, very campy movie series about a town in which, all the adults are murdered. Great. And really, really scary. Check it out. And one more short story. Mary Gateskill wrote a story called The Other Place that appeared in The New Yorker maybe 10 or 12 years ago that is nothing bad happens in it, but it is really, really scary from the perspective of it's written from the perspective of an adult who has a kid who is displaying the same kind of violent fantasies that he had when he was a younger man. And it terrified me. It really terrified me.
Then in that case, I just actually need to say, I believe this is under the radar if you don't randomly read old horror shit. I would say read Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, also published in The New Yorker. You can literally read it on the New Yorker website. They have that shit archived. that will terrify you. It will also make you so unbelievably furious that you have never come up with something so simple. And then take a great joy in reading all the letters that were written about that story when it was first published. It's probably my favorite horror story ever, and I live to create something that is just so unbelievably unsettling.
Chris asks, who is the chosen one, Luke or Anakin? I think they're very. I think the prophecies were very clear on this.
Yeah, I personally, I'm like I spent so much time in this world that I'm kind of like a prophecy hater at this point. I feel like prophecies can always be misread or reread or reconstrued. I believe that they probably will keep finding a chosen one. I think to fit their needs, that's kind of the problem with prophecies. But Jason, I believe you have a more distinct belief on this one.
I mean, I think it's Anakin. I think Anakin was the chosen one. I think that the prophecies were pretty clear. And I think he did bring balance to the Force. Now, like all prophecies worth their salt, there is a ton of context that is missing from the prophecy that detail how exactly you get to that point, but I think it's Anakin. Yeah. I think it's clearly Anakin.
I like the angle. He definitely did bring balance to the Force. It was just like, at what fucking cost?
Yeah.
Okay, another Star Wars question. JG asks, over under on one great Star Wars movie in the next decade. Do you think it's possible?
Great. That's the subjectiveness of it. This decade, so we have another, let's call it...
In the next decade, so we got 10 years.
Oh, so we do have 10... Yeah, there'll be another great one. Yeah.
I think so. I think the truth is that there will be some unique, interesting take, whether it's your 400,000 years ago at the beginning of the Force, whether it's some slightly lower budget, Western-inspired Star Wars movie, whether it's a Pixar droids movie. I just think there's so much scope, and it feels unlikely at the moment because they have struggled to find the right thing, but I believe that there will be a great Star Wars movie in the next decade, because there tends to be. I think it's a cycle. It will happen.
Rebecca asks, Jedi Survivor spoilers here. Spoiler
warning.
I can't help but think about how similar Passing Through the Abyss is to 2001 Space Odyssey / Interstellar. Any interdimensional travel in sci-fi pop culture, does anyone think Disney is trying to plant a multiverse seed here? I mean, you could argue, Chris, of the Rebels Ahsoka question, plug your ears. I think the stuff that happens at the end of Rebels very, 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 very clearly seeds the idea of maybe a multiverse in Star Wars, all of which is to say, Rebecca, I agree with you. I
totally agree with you. And I think that looking at like Dagon Jarrah and the idea of like how long people can survive in this space, I think that there is a multiverse is always afoot, especially because, as we know from the history of storytelling, that is where you get the freedom to tell all kinds of stories and then bring in what you want. In a way, Star Wars is already working with that, with the way that they bring in the expanded universe and legends and kind of canonize and decanonize them. So yeah, I think, Rebecca, you are correct. A asks, I can sometimes be a bit burnt out from surfing the waves of the big IP content ocean. Can't we all? Would love to hear from you both what you think are some of the best standalone, original story, genre films or shows that may have gotten lost in this plethora in the last few years and need more appreciation. I love all these horror questions.
Same.
Jason, do you have any immediate things that stand out? Indie horror movies, shows that might not have gotten the love they deserve?
Well, I've been talking... Here's a movie that I've been talking about to you guys that I haven't mentioned on the pod. George Miller... of Mad Max, of Babe Pig in the City fame, released a movie I want to say a year and a half ago, a couple years ago, starring Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton, titled 1,000 Years of Longing. I almost say solid. I keep almost saying
of course
solitude.
You do.
And it's fucking great. It's great. Go see it. It's about a woman who unleashes a genie and the relationship they have. And it's a lot about, it's honestly just like a story about storytelling and how we create, how we turn our lives into a story, how we can turn it into the story that we want to hear and see. It's really wonderful. And I loved it a lot.
Yeah, mine would be, I think I have recommended this before on the podcast, but I think it was because Jeff passed away, sadly, but there is a movie that I just adore that's up there with my favorite horror movies of all time. It's called Blood Quantum. It was written and directed by Jeff Barnaby. It's a 2019 like Canadian horror movie. And it's basically about a zombie apocalypse that happens in Canada. And then and it's like, what if the indigenous community in the Micmac community were not infected? And what if everyone else was? And it's so good. It's furious. It's angry. It has a brilliant cast, including K. Devery Jacobs from Reservoir Dogs, Michael Grey Eyes, who's like an absolute legend. But it's like so good. And it is just like, I would love to see it at the movie theater. It was only ever on Shudder, so I never got to. But it is just like gory, fast-paced, like brilliant. Shudder is really good for that kind of stuff. They also had a show that I was really into that came out.
Shudder is great.
It's so good. And
great documentaries also.
Oh my gosh.
If you're a fan of
Unreal
horror,
documentaries.
watch the documentaries about horror on Shudder. They're so good.
Yeah. And it's like, they did a show that I also really loved. There was a New Zealand show, another indigenous show called The Deadlands. And it was like, it's a little bit more Xena-ish, even though it's not as serious, but it's still kind of gory. And it's about a warrior who has to get like sent back into the Deadlands. And they come back from the afterlife to kind of find redemption. And that is just so good. Like, if you like fantasy and horror, that's just such a good show. And both of those, I think, are up there for stuff that should have gotten a lot more shout outs. And I mean, if you wanted to watch Prey and then watch Blood Quantum, I think you would be having a really special double bill of really great indigenous genre horror.
Rob asks, Secret Invasion was a mess on both the micro and macro levels. Which mega franchise do you think will be the first to decanonize an existing tentpole part of the franchise, a la when EU Star Wars became Legends? Wow. I think, well, this is interesting.
I think this is a really big question. I think it's a good question to ask. I also think
does Star Wars not count? Because they kind of do it all the time.
I think in a way they're already doing it. Because think of something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
That was MCU canon. It was sold as MCU canon. Kang, it's about to happen, baby. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think we're moved past the time of like somebody from corporate saying, this is no longer canon.
Right.
Like they did with
Chitauri
Legends.
invasion never happened.
That makes people angry. It makes fans feel like they invested their time in something that isn't worthwhile or doesn't matter. So I think we're more in a space where it's going to be kind of like we talked about this before, Thor Dark World. A lot of that felt like it wasn't really important until they made it important again. And I think rather than decanonizing anything definitively, you're going to be in a space where something like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they had the Dark Hold, and they used a different one in the new movies. They had Morgana Le Fay, but she's gonna be a different character. You know, like it's very interesting, but I think they're kind of already doing it.
Yeah, I agree.
They're just not. And as Rob greatly points out here, he says, will studios just say, it's a different timeline? Yeah, I think that's the same thing.
Along those lines, I do think like it is very possible, considering the kind of structural issues that the MCU has with their kind of original stars on the way out or largely having left already, and the ongoing superhero fatigue, this kind of beset culture. I do think that there is like a non-zero chance that the MCU is just like kills everybody. Galactus comes and kills everybody after Fantastic Four, and they restart the whole thing
think so.
Again.
Also, because if you're smart, in my opinion, the X-Men movies, the X-Men universe that they inevitably do under Marvel Studios doesn't need to be part of the MCU. That's just X-Men. You know what I mean? The MCU can be done. So I agree with you. I think that's really real. Okay. Ronan the Key asks, what's the best fan theory or wish this was true for you?
Well, this actually might be true, but I'm going to say that that Paulie betrayed Tony at the end of The Sopranos and was the one who ordered / engineered what is clearly a hit. I mean, various David Chase comments have made it clear that Tony does die at the end of The Sopranos. And there had been, for many years now, has been an active theory that because of certain conversations that happen, and including one outside of Satriel's, that Paulie is the guy who basically pushed the button to make it happen and, you know, made a deal with New York so that he would then take over the family. And I have always found it really compelling. and I continue to find it compelling, and I hope it's true. What about you?
Yeah, I love that. Mine is, this is like a movie pitch that felt very realistic for a little while, but is inevitably never going to happen. This was a comic shop favorite conversation when I was still working in the shop, and it was the idea that you would do a Fantastic Four movie, and you would have Taika probably, as the kind of years went on, directing and playing Mr. Fantastic, and it would begin in the 60s and be like an out there kind of Taika style party, and then you move them to the present MCU as like a fish out of water tale after they've been in the negative zone. That came up so many times as just something that like friends said or that I would think about, and then multiple people started, and I think when Matt Shackman first got kind of connected to it, that was the theory of like what the movie might be about. I don't think they'll do that. I think that the Fantastic Four will exist in their own space, but I really would have loved to see that kind of like swinging 60s Fantastic Four and then thrown into a fish out of water scenario.
That would be really fun.
I still think it's the best way to do it, and I wish we hadn't kind of missed the boat for Taika being the right person on that. But yeah, that's mine that I think about a lot. Okay. Jan Nil 1982 asks, what is the next Barbenheimer and why is it not Saw Patrol?
Okay, so Saw Patrol, for those of you who are not online enough, is the idea that, much like the Barbenheimer phenomenon, Saw X, I believe it is.
Yes, it is the 10th Saw movie.
Saw X and the Paw Patrol feature will then combine to create this, cinema-going weekend event called Saw Patrol. Honestly, like, in terms of the label, it's great.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's the titling is so good.
The titling is
and
amazing.
The rhyme works. I will say, culturally, outside of America, this is a lot harder to do because I don't know how many people know the ins and outs of movie rating systems, but our ratings are very, very unique. In England, for example, Saw will be rated 18 and no one under 18 will be able to go and see it. So I think that cuts off a little bit of that accessibility of Barbenheimer where a lot of people could go and see both. Though actually Oppenheimer was R-rated, so maybe I'm wrong. Is the crossover as large for an animated kids movie trying to get rid of the propaganda of the cartoon and turn them into superheroes? And a prequel about Jigsaw getting scammed by a cancer treatment unit, so he decides to kill them all. Sounds like I would watch it, by the way. I don't know. But I don't like studios trying to recreate this. But I agree. Do like how much fun people are having putting these things together. And Saw Patrol is just, it works so well in the name. Like, you can't hate it. But what will the next one be? We will never know, and it will happen, and it will be so random. And we'll all be in shock. Though if you go and see Paw Patrol and Saw X on the same day, please tell us.
I'm just like picking one at random. It's, if they're going to do it, here's the movies that I think you could possibly do it with. As the kind of, as the more serious version of the movie, like the Oppenheimer in this formulation. I think you could do it with Dune Part 2. I think you could do it with, and it just, again, requires that other movie. I think you could do it with The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
Yeah.
Honestly, Hunger Trolls, I think could happen. The Trolls
Trolls
band together.
Hunger Trolls is good. Hunger Trolls is good. Especially because Trolls is a musical.
Yeah.
And also the new Hunger Games movie is like an insane, like retro-futuristic steampunk movie, so they're very different. Yeah. I like that.
Napoleon, I continue to say it can happen. Napoleon. How about this? Napoleon. So it's Napoleon and Leo starring Adam Sandler.
Wow. Okay, that's the one because that's cursed as fuck.
So the movie in the weekend would be called Napoleon.
Wow, Ridley Scott, listen to that one. Make it happen, baby.
Okay, Bertolt Mecht asks, that's funny. Thoughts on the Hellfire Gala and the potential end of the best X-Men status quo since at least Morrison? I could argue best. I think it is best. I have not read the Hellfire Gala, but
listen,
Rosie
I'm just going to say,
now.
I agree. I'm not going to do any spoilers, and listen out on your feeds for when we come back, because the Hellfire Gala issue or episode is on, it's too long to talk about right now, but you're not wrong, and it's definitely going to be a conversation we have in the future.
Sarah asks, why have Marvel movies lost some of their sparkle lately?
Whew.
I think, just this is naturally what happens.
Yeah. Transitional phase.
We're in a transitional phase. There are always going to be issues with regards to the cast leaving. And I think clearly they overinvested in the space.
Yes. Saturation.
Which honestly is, you could criticize them for this. I would argue that every single movie studio that had this rocket ship would have exactly done the same thing. Where is the break-even point in the money? If more money keeps coming out, the more we invest, then shouldn't we just keep investing and see how much money comes out? Like this is the incentive that underpins basically our entire system of doing things. But I think this is always going to happen.
Yeah, you got to remember, Endgame, you're talking about like the biggest movie on Earth. It's going to be incredibly hard to follow that up, especially when those movies had been barreling along at such an unbelievable speed and rate of success. I think it was a lack of planning.
Yeah.
I think it is a slight confusion about what made people love the movies.
Yeah.
And I also think it's this transitional phase. How do you follow up the biggest movie in the world? As we've seen, it's really, really hard.
It's really hard to do it.
But that's not to say we haven't had incredible things. WandaVision, I still stand. That is going to stand for years as just a truly great television series. And I think, as we've kind of spoken about before, the best thing about this phase, which seems kind of messed up and weird and in, a lot of ebbs and flows, there's going to be a lot of cool stuff to kind of retcon and pull from. And also, if it leads to other people going and seeing movies like, hey, Donna, go and see movies like Barbie, Oppenheimer, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, cool. Like, go see other movies and the MCU will still be around. These comics have been around for almost 100 years. The movies are still going to be here. But yeah, I think it's a lack of planning. And I think it's very, very hard to follow up the most successful movie of all time.
I think it's just very hard. The Chase asks, what's more important for franchise IP, satisfying old nerds or generating new nerds? Wow, interesting existential question.
I believe it is a balance of both.
I
think you have to introduce new audiences, hence why, think about Star Wars, think about superhero movies, think about Ninja Turtles. A lot of what they're doing with those movies is selling merchandise to children. And that is the children's entry point into the movie. I think that making things accessible, I love the requel model. I love The Force Awakens. I love the new Scream movies. I think you can do something really fun where you have legacy characters but introduce new audiences with new characters. I think the reason The Force Awakens was so successful financially is because it essentially was a retread of what worked well in Star Wars as a jumping off point to then something so different and incredible like The Last Jedi. I think that it's a balance of both. I think there's no harm in Easter eggs, in fan service. I love those things. I love seeing a character that I know. I love getting a nod to the source material. But I think nothing is going to survive without new audiences. So I think it's a balance of both.
I think you're exactly right. And I think for an example of something that got the balance way wrong, you can just look at a movie we recently covered, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, which made almost no attempt to bring in new fans and is just kind of like a movie for like seniors, I guess. Like, sadly.
And did they even like it?
It's like not, that's what happens when you get that balance wrong.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another good, thank you, Super Producer Saul, for these combinations, because this is another great existential question. My Punny Bone, good name, asks, I'm just wondering if your mood or state of mind affects your viewing experience when you are watching fandom-related content.
What does that mean?
So, like, I would say yes, because, like, if I'm in a chill mood and I'm feeling open-minded and I just want to watch something fun, I can enjoy something that is maybe objectively not great. But if I'm feeling, like, kind of bummed out and down, watching something, I'll be honest, we can't, watching Secret Invasion, it could kind of bum me out. Like, if I wasn't in an open-minded mood where I'm like, so many people worked on this, like, this is something that people spent a lot of time on. When I'm thinking like that, I can appreciate it. But if I'm feeling kind of down or something and I watch something that doesn't necessarily adapt something that I really love, I can definitely be affected by it. I can also be affected by watching something and that thing bumming me out. If it's like depressing, or even if it's really, really great, but still kind of bleak, like I definitely have to, sometimes I just have to watch like a cozy murder mystery if I'm feeling down. I can't be putting on like an anxiety inducing show.
I'm the same. And that's for any content. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be even nerdy stuff. Like I recently finished The Bear season 2. And that's a show that like I can't
I am
binge.
longing out watching episode 7. I cannot
can't
do
fucking
it.
binge. It's just too much screaming, too much people being toxic. Too many times I'm like yelling at the screen, just fire this fucking person already. Like,
Yeah, or you fucking quit if you don't want to do it.
yeah,
just like
it's
fucking
like,
quit.
God. And it's so well made that it just like creates those feelings in my body that I then have to be like, okay, I gotta just like watch Below Deck or something.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know, like I just gotta throw on, Vanderpump Rules or something very, very light. Yeah, absolutely. My mood, all of which is to say, usually it's not my mood that affects how I respond to the thing. It's the thing affecting my mood.
Yeah.
Mike asks, congratulations, Rosie and Jason, for all their awesome writing lately. They
Thank you.
both have a lot of amazing things, from cover stories to comics to movies. It's amazing as a fan to get to follow. I would love categorically any XRV writing discussion on really any aspects of those processes.
Okay.
Rosie.
So for me, I think me and Jason are actually quite similar on this, but like I love writing stuff, but finishing stuff is very hard. So something that I always try and do is just get through a first draft as quickly as possible. That is like my biggest tip, especially if it's something shorter, a comic script, a screenplay, a pilot. Guys,
My
Donna
dog
is
She
smooching.
absolutely loves
She is
Super Producer Chris.
smooching Super Producer Chris. She knows it's the last episode and she's saying goodbye in a romantic way. But yeah, I try and finish stuff. Doing something I'm trying to do at the moment.
Same.
I've got a novel that I'm trying to finish by the end of the year. I am doing hour-long writing sprints and just separating an hour off and really, really trying to finish something. Also, something I'm doing is just appreciating how much actual writing output I have, because I do writing challenges. I've done 1,000 Words of Summer, which is really great. But the truth is, I didn't really realize until I started doing them that a lot of people don't really write anything in a day. But sometimes, even if I'm not writing the thing I want to write, like a novel or a screenplay or a pilot or something, I will be writing like 5,000 words for multiple outlets. So also just recognizing that my output is really high, and it's just about recentering on my stories. That's what I'm trying to focus on at the moment. So that's me. I try and do writing sprints and also just try and finish the thing and then go
finish
back and
the
edit
thing.
it.
That's my number one thing, is finish the thing. There's a great, I've purchased every single book about writing that there is to purchase. And one of the best ones, I'll give you my two favorites. On Writing by Stephen King, which just
Great
has
book.
great nuts and bolts, how to do it, what you don't need to do, kind of stuff from a master storyteller. And Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird, which is more of a philosophical take, but which has some of the great revelations that have like changed my writing life. And the most important one is Shitty First Drafts.
Yeah.
Your first version of whatever the thing you're writing is going to be bad. Let it be bad and don't question it. So I do the same thing Rosie does. Let's take a TV script, like a half-hour sitcom script, for example. I will try to write that in 1 or 2 days, like as fast as I can, vomit it out with placeholder jokes, like here character A does a joke and character B responds to the joke. Like,
Or
it doesn't
some
mean,
cliche dialogue
Whatever.
and you go back and...
just get it down, because that's the hardest part. Because there's always that voice that's going to be there that goes, this fucking sucks. This is bad. Holy shit, this is so bad. What if people see this? And it's important that you have that voice, because that's going to be the thing that powers you through the editing, where you rewrite and you make it good. But you'll never get there if all you do is listen to that voice and you just, here's a thing that has happened to me as I'm
same.
continuing to try to finish my novel, is if I read what I wrote last night, then I'll just keep rewriting it, and I'll just keep rewriting it. And next thing you know, for 2 weeks, I've been working on the same chapter, the same paragraph, 2 paragraphs in a chapter. Just finish it. It doesn't matter if it fucking sucks. It's supposed to. It's supposed to be really bad. It's supposed to be really, really, really shitty. Finish it, and then go back, and then you can make it better and make it better and make it better. So just like, I cannot stress this enough. For your first draft of whatever you're writing,
It's gonna suck.
it's going to suck. Mute the voice that is telling you it sucks and just push through and to the end. The second you start feeling yourself reading 2 sentences before where you are, or 3 sentences or a paragraph, and going, oh shit, that's bad. Stop. And just maybe close the document and come back when you feel like you can just like, you can push through again. And just don't reread until you finish. That's it.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, just find friends who want to read your stuff. They'll be the ones who help you go from bad first draft to great second draft to amazing third draft. With my pilot and my screenplays, having friends read them over and go, oh, this works, or this doesn't work, or this person needs more, has been like invaluable.
Yes.
So I would definitely say that.
That's very important. And to add on to that, when you're getting notes from your friends, again, super important to be able to have those people that you trust to give you the notes. If you're in a place where you're not finished, it's okay to tell them, hey, don't give me a note that will make me go back.
Yeah.
You know, just, again, it's the hardest thing to do, but finish it.
And you'll feel so good when you know you can finish one thing. It makes finishing everything else so much easier.
Yeah, just finish it. Up next, Nerd Out.
In today's Nerd Out, where you tell us what you love and why, a theory you're excited to share, or a quick question we can answer, and you have sent us so many over the last 2 years. Haitch, friend of the pod and co-host of the Escape Hatch podcast, which you might know as Dune Pod, pitches us on honestly one of the best shows of like the last decade, which is Warrior.
Oh, wow, I just started.
It's so fucking good.
Jason and Rosie, it's H. For the final Nerd Out of X-Ray Vision Volume 1, I wanted to point y'all at the excellent TV show Warrior, currently streaming on Max. The show was created by Jonathan Tropper, the creator and showrunner of the groundbreaking action drama series Banshee that launched Anthony Starr's career, produced by Justin Lin, and is based on the writings of Bruce Lee. A historical martial arts drama set in 1870s San Francisco, it follows the story of our hero, Assam, a recent Chinese immigrant who comes to America with nothing to find his sister who was previously sent over. Assam is quickly sucked into the Tong Wars, with competing Chinese gangs fighting for control of the illicit trades in San Francisco. The series features incredible martial arts action, all of which is extremely grounded, beautifully intricate, and always story-driven. But the show really shines because of the fantastic characters, including the heads of the competing Chinese gangs, the unemployed Irish masses indignant at a new wave of immigrants being exploited and taking their jobs, the mostly Irish cops trying to keep the peace, and the business and political forces manipulating everyone to keep the money flowing, same as it ever was. All of this is set to a bangin' RZA-style soundtrack, with each episode ending with a different killer Chinese rap song, so you will be seriously entertained while you take it all in. However, what makes this show truly unique is its representation of Asian and Asian American people. Series leads Andrew Koji, Hoon Lee, Diane Doan, and Olivia Chang are never shown as caricatures, stereotypes, or side characters. Rather, they are the center of attention and fully fleshed out with their own agency at the center of the show. I remember an interview with Alan Yang, producer of Loot and Master of None, saying that Hollywood never even shows the intimacy of Asian characters kissing. Well, this shows a hell of a lot more than that and leaves viewers with a lot to think about in terms of our legacy of exploitation, though never in a preachy or sanctimonious way. If you love great storytelling and stunning martial arts, this is the show you've been waiting for. The season 3 finale airs this week, and all 3 seasons are streaming now on Max. Watch the first 5 minutes of episode 1, and you'll be hooked. On a final note, on behalf of all the fans of the pod, including the fantastic community in the Discord, I wanted to say thanks to both of you and the entire production team for all the hard work and passion you've brought the last 2 years to make incredible episodes week after week. You've inspired us to not only be passionate about the stories we love, but to care about and support the creators and the unique stories they're telling. Thank you. Cannot wait for Volume 2 of the show to begin. Peace out.
Thanks, H. If you have theories, passions, or quick questions you want to share, hit us up at xray@crooked.com. Instructions are in the show notes.
That's it for us, Rosie. Any plugs?
Just keep an eye on your feeds to hear where you're going to hear us next. You can follow me, Rosie Marks, at Instagram and Letterboxd. And yeah, thank you for listening.
Same here. We'll be back soon. Hopefully soon. We're not touch wood. Hopefully soon. Secondarily, I co-wrote a movie with Shea Serrano that's on a platform that's struck, so I won't mention it. But if you use the Google machine, you can figure out what it is, and you can watch it if you wanna. Some quick thank yous to some of the people who have been really so integral to the creation and running of this pod. It couldn't have happened without them. First and foremost, our super producers, Chris Lord and Saul Rubin, who've been amazing every week in, week out, getting the prep ready, helping us with fact check, and just basically being kind of like a compass on what we're doing. Vasilis, who without Vasilis, everything would sound like crap.
You would never be able to hear us.
It would sound bad. Delon, who without whom you would never see us and never know what we look like. Just a fantastic person. Ryan Walliston, who came in late but helped me tremendously on Take Line and is just like an all-around great guy. Nikki Shaner Bradford, without whom many of our omnibuses would have been factually wrong.
Just incorrect.
Incorrect. Kendra James, who helped us on the management side. Jordan, Sarah. Caroline Reston, who again was like really, really influential on Take Line and again here on launching X-Ray Vision. Sandy Gerard, who just like helped put together so many of the really, really important pieces. Ewe Akulate, who helped us on the social side so that people could get the message out. Caroline Dunphy, same. Ben, Desi on the marketing side, Gabby Leverett, and of course the founders, John, and Tommy, who, gave us a shot here at Crooked and let us run a show that is crazy. Carlton Gillespie, who again helped launch the show, and it was super, super important on the Take Line side. And Brian Vasquez, who sadly is no longer with us, but wrote the fantastic and catchy title song to X-Ray Vision and all the kind of like interstitial little musical pieces. Thank you to all of those folks.
Yeah.
Could not have done it without you.
And thank you to everyone who listened to the show and just sent your super cool questions and theories, who joined us in the Discord, who left us really nice 5-star reviews, and who just supported the podcast and made this like a really incredible community.
We love bringing stuff that we love talking about to people who also love it. So thank you to all of you.
You can watch full episodes of the podcast on YouTube now. Also check out our Twitter at XRVPod. And you can join our Discord, where we will still be hanging out with all the coolest fans. We're still in the Discord. It's still going, baby. And that's a great place to get info on what will happen next.
5-star ratings, 5-star reviews. We need them. We got to have them. You got to give it to us. Here's one from Trackman. Best pop culture podcast out there.
Wow. 5-star reviews. Thank you.
That's it.
That's all you need to know.
What a way to end the podcast.
Thank you.
We'll be back.